Welcome back to the Loud Sound Epicenter podcast. Just wanted to say thank you to Metaphysical, it might be pronounced, who left a comment on the last video, or second to last video, technically, for bringing something to my attention. We're going to be bringing some structure to the show. I mean, it only should be obvious because we talk a lot about order, talk a lot about authority, and what kind of obscure channel would we be if we weren't loyal to those first principles? So, we're going to try to make this a pattern on the show. I know that the live streams are, as you can tell, not pre-scripted, maybe mentally, but that is something that I want to thank Metaphysical for, because if there's any confusion from the audience's perspective, obviously that needs to be taken into account. So, got to say that at the outset. Today I got a speech prepared, not just for you, but it's technically for a university. However, I think you guys are learned men or potentially women. So I think it's fair to run this by you guys. I think you guys would be interested. It's about 20th century philosophy. A lot of it is cringe. However, one of the reasons I encourage people to stick with college, as degrading as it could be, doesn't have to be that way. And so this is one way that it can't be. And this is about 5.5 minutes, roughly speaking. We'll see. We'll see how we do. Trying to get the feeling out of the speech too. That's the other thing. I practiced it last night, and I want to see how I feel about it for today. Got to get in the headspace for it. You guys might have some experience as well. What else? What else? Oh, somebody, for those that don't know, also, there is a Discord channel for this channel. So I'll put that in the comment section down below. And right now it's a general chat. And then, of course, we have a Thomas Lore channel. Of course, gotta pay respect to the person who really got this channel into a better state. So if you guys want that link, I'll send it pretty soon here. What else? What else? Oh, someone was asking. I think it was good student, the good student. He said he sent me rather a video to review, which I thought about doing in this stream. I don't know if he would want that to be a separate thing. We'll see. Again, this is structured, but it's also free flowing. And I was wanting to do that. And so it's that movie we talked about from an objectivist perspective. And one of the themes on this show, unfortunately, is this very cringe philosopher that I don't even want to name because it's just not worth it. And so I would like to try to make sense of that perspective and try and drive the point of what we talked about in the first or last video, second or last video. So that's that. I also linked this show on Instagram. I don't know if any of you guys would be curious to see that. I also didn't catch the Velocicat Ed Dutton video that everyone's raving about. I'm planning on seeing that. This is finals week, okay? If you're a student, you understand this is a very stressful time, but it's about making it, okay? We are all going to make it. And so a lot of things I've been not catching up on. The Thomas content on Pete Kionis. Is that how you say it? That's in the works. I just saw on Twitter I think the last episode of the series. So it's like a trilogy, as far as I know. That's out today. And what else? I know we had some neo-reactionary people in the second or last video. Academic Agent went on. What else? I just dropped content with Thomas and Paul Fahrenheit. Paul Fahrenheit, can't say enough good things about him. So that'll be released at some point. And I'm also looking forward to Prudentialist will be on Paul Fahrenheit's Substack, which I recommend. Paul Fahrenheit just talked to Thomas on Chicagoland, and he's going to be talking to Prudentialist about Rush. So it feels like a lot of this content is pandering right to me, right to this show. So I'm grateful that all of this is happening. The fact that it's happening on finals week, or the beginning of it at least, it's a little inconvenient, but that's all right. But that's all right. I think that's most of it. Most of the housekeeping. Also, I mean, if you're not white pilled, don't worry, folks. All right, we're using everything at our disposal to make it. So, got the other one sitting here, but that's for backup. Okay. So, structure. Also, I got to start reading more of Catherine D, one of my kind of unknown favorite accounts on Twitter. She's been very successful this year specifically. And I was watching Prudential's stream like an hour or so ago, and he was citing her. And so I was pulling up her feed for the first time in a while, and it's just giving me some motivation of what to do with this show, emphasize the pop culture angle. I was also reading this guy who I don't particularly like, but Lester Bangs is a bit of a character in the Rolling Stone magazine writers sphere. And the fact that he was wrong about a lot of his takes, but he kind of had this music crossing over with politics. That is something that could be an avenue for people like us and other channels too. I know Prude was kind of hinting at that. I don't know if that's what he meant. I don't want to put words in his mouth, but it just seems like there's a lot of potential, with that Vanity Fair article out. I kind of wanted to get into that, the Vanity Fair article. There was also a op-ed about the reactionary chic, which is a very interesting term. It's funny how they project a lot of labels that we don't even call ourselves, but sometimes they come up with stuff that sounds cooler. And so I don't know. I was actually reading that in class today, ironically, and it's just funny to kind of see the scene develop, I don't know exactly how you guys view this corner of the internet. Somebody in chat, I got to pull up this comment because it really makes me happy to just kind of just see it written out, but I really feel like this is the CBGBs of the dissident right. This is I've jokingly called this the double R diner. I don't know, this might be CBGBs because you got a hodgepodge of like proto new wave and aggressive punk rock. So it's a very interesting mix. Thomas is definitely a force for that too. So I've just been, I was taking an Uber today, and I was just kind of thinking about that aesthetic. I really like the direction that things are going in, and these are the type of things that when people say our message isn't working or it's not receptive, there's very limited resources we got. I think that's coming to an impasse, and we're seeing that with some of the positive coverage. Even I know that this is a bit of a polarizing figure, but like Sargon kind of put out a video today that I saw on Academic Agent's feed. Just seeing his review or some of it, that kind of puts me in a better headspace, and I think everyone else should too. So I don't know. I was also texting someone who I'm going to be bringing on in a few minutes here, Jack Burden. I was I was calling him something something else that just came to mind, but I was just texting him about it. I don't know. I feel the momentum. I'm feeling the good vibes. I'm feeling the Zoomer energy, the Bart Simpson energy, the codename Kids Next Door, Ed, and Eddie, Z Boys. Since I'm from California, that's probably on my mind for that reason. What else? I don't know. We're like a sophisticated jackass crew. You know what I mean? We got a lot of cachet. So it's not. Anyways, I'm sort of rambling here, which I said I wouldn't do at the top of the show. Anyways, we'll get to the speech. We'll get to the speech. But first, I want to hear from you guys because you're such a big part. Um, I'm confident. I'm confident. I also got to see the Northman. Another thing, I'm like I said, I got to catch up. There's too much content. We're spoiled. So, what do we got? Well, let's start with the most important question. Ace, are you a fan of Reese's Pieces? I am. Strong supporter. All right, we're going to be getting subject to change. Jack, I see you. I see you. Oh, ladies in here. What's up? What's up? Exactly. Only stressful if you let it be stressful. So true, Zach. So true. Whole chat was for cat. Is that right? See, that is so amusing to me. Pete Cojones. What was that character from Vice City? Who was voiced by Danny Trejo? Oh, Alberto, Alberto. Tuning in just to say that Eminem mini M&Ms. It's Eminem minis, Danielle. It's not mini Eminem. All right, great start. Great start to the chat. All right. All right. Ed was drunk. Awesome. Drunk Ed. I still got to find that episode where he was on AA stream drunk. That's some lore that you guys are much more in tune with. Again, catch up. I've been watching Dave's content, the distributist. Love. I found an old one from Andy Worski. It was him and and AA. Him and AA on a stream like 2018. People should look that up. It's on BitChute, and they're talking about religion. I think you guys would really like that, honestly. All right. All right. We'll begin. We'll begin. And as far as I know, it's okay for me to look at my notes during the speech. So, going to be doing that real quick here for you guys, if you don't mind. If you don't mind. Also, I'm just curious since I put this out on Instagram, how useful. Ah, did it not load? My goodness. My goodness. It did not load. Can you imagine? All right, let's fix that right now. Let's fix that. My goodness, my goodness. All right. The speech is about Aristotle, college. Well, college is the setting. Okay. Apologies, apologies, apologies. Don't wanna don't wanna be a burden. Don't wanna be a burden. Okay. Sorry about that, sorry. I'm sorry, Vingle, I'm sorry, but thank you for tuning in. As you saw in Prude's chat, I had to get your thoughts on this. So, gonna go up there and also I was writing about Russia in class when I'm supposed to be listening. All right. So I'll say my name. I'll be presenting here. So it's like 17:30. No, I didn't base. I did not. All right. So 17:30, we'll time this. It's supposed to be about 5 minutes. I'll be presenting Moral Philosophy by Elizabeth Anscombe. I'll figure that out. One of the main themes is the gap between ancient philosophy and our modern interpretation, getting in the way of our understanding. The first quote: in present day philosophy, an explanation is required how an unjust man is a bad man or an unjust action is a bad one. To give such an explanation belongs to ethics, but it cannot even be begun until we are equipped with a sound philosophy of psychology. So, if we were to look at moral philosophy as a structure, we would have to assign value to justice and virtue, and that's how we would understand ethics. For example, a term like injustice probably meant a limited number of things during ancient Greece. Today, that same word would be too vague and could include theft, corruption, etc. And that's another reason why talking about morality is hard to reduce to one standard. Unless you wanted to have a zero tolerance policy across the board that includes the past and present terms, that would be one way to answer moral philosophy. But what the author suggests is a term she uses: conceptual analysis. Has to come first because without that, words like should, need, and later on she says ought need at least some type of context. Otherwise, there's always going to be confusion on what those words actually mean and the way that they're applied today. One of the main sources is Aristotle, and he's one of the best examples of how most of these words get misunderstood as cultural norms and history change the values and priorities for people at a given time. He lists other labels like villain, and they could be applied to someone. Yet, what is the moment where someone reaches that point? And does the intention or motivation matter when someone does something like a crime that fits with the label? Most of these deeper questions don't get the same amount of attention as the label itself seems to be the thing that sticks throughout history. This becomes even more confusing when you think about the perception of that label itself, distinct from the definition that Elizabeth gives. For example, he states that if laws were, or she says rather, if laws were completely abolished, there would still be a sigma or stigma against people who violate cultural norms So it speaks to how universal a lot of these terms are throughout history. Now, once David Hume gets introduced as the second main source, that's when things get even more complicated because it really tries to open up all the possibilities that are motivating these terms. He uses a judicial court as an example, as and how you can't determine what a verdict is without first agreeing on the principles that lead us to the verdict. The number of different value systems, including utilitarianism, objective morality, is also another factor. Because you can measure these things based on consequences or intent, that can be the structure of the moral system depending on what people value most at that time. And it's usually a first principle that dictates everything around it. As Dr. Sandoval said, and that's another citation. The final quote, she says, whether an Aristotelian or a believer in divine law, you will deal with certain cases based on the method of, this word, forgot. I was going to do a stand in for that word. While it may lead you to stretch a point on that circumference, it will not permit you to destroy the center. So even though each perspective may be different, there is only a handful of centers that can be narrowed down. One of them being objective moral philosophy. That can make moral philosophy a little easier to understand. Another template that she describes is natural law. Since many people believed in religious divinity, that was the best way to understand a rule, the obligation to follow that rule, and the incentive to not break that rule. Once that standard changed in history, it's a matter of finding how to have that same unity under the law in a secular society. If you have a contract that's written out, for example, that is a clear way to verify if the contract is based on principles, relationships, social norms. That is a lot harder to tell whether it's sustainable in that society. He ends by saying, I keep saying she ends by saying that what makes it hard to understand moral philosophy is specifically the language that is passed down over the generations. The most used one in the essay being what people ought to do, she says a lot, and how to determine by what authority can be used in a modern context. Since a lot of the different points of view here today, including Christian, consequentialists, those being two separate things, it is still an open debate what is the moral lens to tell people to adopt. And people that are studying moral philosophy are also going to be responsible for creating the proper framework that decides what justifies that center. And then my two questions that are required are, is there a universal basis for moral philosophy? And the second is, do words like good and evil apply equally in all cases? So that is the speech. And based off of the other presentations, this is a lot more wordy. I don't know if that's going to stand out. And that shouldn't be a detriment to the grade. It's just being comfortable with that. It's very, I don't know. That's more of like a preference. So I gotta get through that. Um now the take is, because this is college in California, no less. Obviously, the take is objective virtue ethics. Aquinas is perspective on moral philosophy. That should be the guiding principle when we're talking about ethics. That is the one that I think wins against consequentialists. We're not loyal to something because it polarizes people. That's a very, shallow reason. You wanna have a how would you even determine that? You would have to create a first principle, which Rothbard talks about, or that might be Hoppe, one of the Mises guys. So now, if we want to give like an academic agent speech, if we want to give, we would say that utilitarianism, as somebody said, is a philosophy for pigs. We would say that consequentialist consequentialism rather is not the end point. That is just a byproduct of the outcomes in society. So, and also the things that people value, like freedom. There's a very big difference between John Locke's British definition of freedom and somebody like Rousseau, who's a radical. The French uh, appropriation that has defined a lot of the progressivism in the 20th and 21st century, the escalation and the perversion of the word freedom. So, as you guys know, you guys have heard all the talking points. It's just, when you're in a class, you want to kind of have a clean palate. You want to pass the class. That's always a good goal. So, yeah, that also I feel like John Doyle up here. Just kind of rapid fire. That doesn't feel very that's not very Rolling Stone. That's not very Lester Bangs. This sort of a I guess it's better than being snarky and having this, running away from your religious parents, which Lester Bangs kind of did. I think with his mom. His mom might have been Catholic, which is cool. But he went down this decadent road. And it's like Van Morrison. Van Morrison is the guy that you're gonna I mean, you're it's kinda cool that Lester Bangs was a contrarian in the sense that he was talking about the death of rock and roll. That's something that I was thinking about this morning. That book that someone recommended in chat, how the Beatles ruined rock and roll because it used to be the Southern Elvis Presley, Eddie Cochran, as Thomas was tweeting the other day. That is rock and roll, this Americana. And then the British invasion is this foreign influence that reduces it to the psychedelic scene, sexual revolution. It's at odds. And especially when you look at the trajectory of Elvis, who got into gospel. Elvis wanted to go to church, but because he was a celebrity, he couldn't, or it was difficult for him to go because of the celebrity factor. And so you can turn that into like a Substack article. You know what I mean? It's the Anglos making rock and roll disreputable. And anyways, what was I saying? Yeah. I don't know. I kind of want to get into the Heathers review. Kind of want to get into the thanks to the good student for recommending that. So here, let me look at the chat real quick, and then we'll probably get into that. Oh man, all you guys on a Thursday afternoon. Oh, Raging Mandrill. Recognize you from Prude? No, I haven't really got into them. I don't remember what they sound like. I will check out that song. Oh, I also want to specify something that I said like a lot of streams ago, but I just want to set the record straight. New to the channel, Marshall Forward with $9.99. Thank you. I appreciate it. New to the channel, been binge watching all your videos with Thomas the last few days. That guy knows his history, man. Thank you. Thank you. Godspeed, brother. Thank you. I appreciate it. Yeah, dude, Thomas is a machine. Can't say enough. Can't say enough nice things. Yes, Vingold, that's a good point. That's a good point. You don't have to be rock and roll to make good music. Obviously, yesterday I was listening to Kim Wilde. I don't even know if you guys know who that is, but she put out a bunch of stuff. Very underrated pop singer, at least by modern standards. Back in the day, I think she was more well known. But yeah, of course, we're not prudish against a lot of the genres outside of rock. Oh wow, okay, lady knows who Kim Wilde, dude. Kim Wilde. First album it's kind of like the first Blondie album, if you've ever heard that. They just don't have the sound quite right. And then obviously, Blondie's a complicated situation because obviously Parallel Lines, that's the identity that they went with. But I mean, Plastic Letters has like a combination of the both. You got the poppy hooks, but then it's got a punk rock attitude. So with Kim Wilde's first album, it's like a Hall& and Oates album that you're never gonna get to finish because why do you need to? It's, the reason why a lot of people get the greatest hits, they don't wanna go through a lot of some of the filler that's on a lot of these pop albums, and I'm curious if, like, do people listen to pop albums all the way through? Because it seems like the consumer standard of today is just get the most popular stuff. That's like our MTV moment where we just like the ones that have music videos to them. But Kim Wilde, the first album's a little too generic, just like the first Blondie. But what I really like is Catch. What is it? Is it Catch Me? Thought it was Catch Me If You Can, but it's Catch. Anyway, that one's got. We were talking about Susie on the Banshees one stream. The last album had that arena rock, arena pop sound, and Kim Wilde, obviously, once she got a lot more money, the production took a big boost, and you can really hear the difference as the albums go along. I haven't listened to Secrets. I think that's the one between the first and the third. Might be the fourth, but uh, the Catch rather might be the fourth. But the one that has Ego on it, that's not one that I've gone through. Bonnie Tyler is another one. Bonnie Tyler, totally underrated as far as, like, through her albums, okay? Everyone knows Holding Out for a Hero. Everyone knows Total Eclipse of the Heart, Heartache. Everyone knows the singles, but just like Heart, the Wilson sisters, you gotta dive into some of that stuff. And to bring it back to Kim Wilde, I mean, you got even if you just graze the surface with Bonnie Tyler's album Hide Your Heart, Notes from America. I think about that intro sometimes just because it's really hard to describe, but it's not a greatest hits sounding song. It's just pop in this like rock formula, if that makes sense. Kind of like how Tom Petty has Running Down a Dream. See, that is not an MTV song, that's just metal, and that's kinda what Bonnie Tyler does with a lot of her underrated tracks. Streets of Little Italy, and even Hide Your Heart title track, that's your single song. That's greatest hits worthy, but again, that's not a song that people would probably throw out there. So anyways, Bonnie Tyler, Kim Wilde, gotta give the pop artists some credit, okay? We say we like 80s, bass guitarists. We understand the Chad side of it, the masculine glam metal Sunset Strip sound. The a big part of the 80s was that hooks, that hooky, well, I mean, glam has that too, but more vocal driven over riff driven, you know. That's why Van Halen was a game changer. They took the hooks from pop and mixed it with the heavy metal riffs. Perfect combination, perfect recipe. So, anyways, what's another one though? The Cars, another one. That's not too hard rock, but that's nice feel good music. Anyways, oh, what do we got here? Oh, okay, Spiff. We'll get to that in a second. We'll get to that in a second. Yo, Marshall Ford with 4.99, dude. Thank you, man. You're spoiling me. The self-titled 1975 Ted Nugent album. Every track on that record, no filler. Stoked for his new album coming out tomorrow. Where do we get that? Where do we get that? Where is it? Where is it? Oh, it should be. Oh, I think it's. Wait a second. Wait a second. Oh man, one of the best debuts ever, man. One of the best. That kind of George Thorogood rock, ZZ Top type rock. Yeah, man, we like the. Just got invited to brunch. Does anybody know somebody who really likes brunch? Anybody in these political circles that really you can't keep them from brunch? Anyways, yeah, dude, Ted Nugent. Ted Nugent's the man. And Free for All. I mean, dude, Free for All was Meatloaf sang lead vocals on a lot of those songs. I don't know how many people know that. You know, I never really got into Meatloaf's solo career, but dude, the vocals on Free for All, Writing on the Wall. That's like probably my favorite Ted Nugent song. I mean, I don't know if you can ever beat something off of the debut, but I mean that song is at least top 2, top 3. Yeah. Um and also Ted Nugent kind of has that glam aesthetic where it's like really heavy, but it's, you know, smiles on stage. It's not taking it too serious like a lot of these extreme metal bands do. He's really letting the energy flow. So, you know, the Tarzan all over the stage. That's yeah, how can you hate on that? Um Trying to think what else. The Motor City Madhouse. That's like the probably the heaviest song off that record, but yeah, we love it. We love it. I'm trying to think if there's and also he kind of went glam in the 80s, I think with If You Can't Lick 'em, Lick 'em. And oh, the Nugent. Nugent, that might be 1980. That's very got a lot of hooks. There's definitely a shift in the songwriting, so people probably think he probably does the same thing. It's like what people say about the Ramones or yeah, the Ramones where they people listen to the first 3 albums. Razorfist is actually right on this. People listen to the first 3 Ramones albums and they say this band sounds the same. This is all they can do. And it's like if you look at their 80s stuff like End of the Century or Animal Boy, I mean they've experimented with all kinds of stuff. AOR, you know, 50s rock and roll. So, people really reveal how much they don't know about bands just based off of the little that they've heard. Speaking of Razorfist, I wanted to correct the record. Correct the record. I was wrong. I was wrong. I said that Razorfist defended the Ayn Rand Institute, which isn't true. He didn't defend it. He was actually making fun of it, and I misread or misinterpreted the tweet. So he's actually smart enough to not support the institute. He says it's like they're about as corrupt as another thing like Cato probably or Heritage. I mean, one of those like DC think tanks. I forget what the comparison was. It was probably something different, but I remember I said that I think with Thomas, but that's actually I went back and checked, and that's actually not what he said. So, but he does like Ayn Rand, which is disappointing. Um, that's a perfect segue to get into Heather's. So I guess we'll do that right now. So Heather's is a right Hegelian film, the will to power of Veronica Veronica Sawyer, Winona Ryder's character. She stands up to her boyfriend in this very cliched, you know, even though it's an anti John Hughes movie, they still surrender to these old formulas where the uh, the woman is going to stand up to the bad guy, and it's very cringe because Christian Slater, what is it? Jason Dean, he doesn't have to become the caricature that he ends up at the end of the film. He's the smartest character in the film, and then he does the dumbest thing at the end, which doesn't make any sense. And they do that for the sake of drama. And one of the things that they do to keep the suspense is they disregard the Betty Finn character, who is probably the most virtuous character in the film because she understands Veronica doesn't like the hierarchy in the high school, but rather than try to fix it, or rather, she kind of snobbishly writes in her diary, okay, about how, I don't like these Heathers, but she stays with them. This Jason Dean guy is going off the rails, but she's not really helping his situation. And so she understands that the hierarchy is a problem. But Betty, on the other hand, says that, listen, there's really not much you can do about the hierarchy in high school. And so why not just kind of take a spectator's role rather than trying to compete for, like what Veronica's trying to do at the beginning of the film, which is try and get in with Heather. Well, I don't know which specific one. Is that, I know there's like a Heather Duke. I forget all the names, but anyways, she's trying to level up at the school, and Betty recognizes that you don't have to do that. And when Veronica starts to hang around JD, it's like she plays dumb at a lot of these major plot points, and I just don't really think she's all that for as far as the main character. That's not really. I was going somewhere with this, but as you can see, I'm running out of steam. So, anyways, I watched this review, and I forget the name actually, but anyways, this guy had an objectivist lens, so I'm guessing he supports Ayn Rand. I don't know his deal. I only watched that one video, and people got to stop like summarizing the film as part of the review. I know people do that on Unheard. That's probably the standard. We really need like a Lester Bangs to get in there and just say that's not how you do it. You just go in there and gonzo journalist mode. Just do what you want. And so anyways, he sums up the story, okay, blah blah blah. And then what's the takeaway? He does recognize that like the fact that the hierarchy of high school is like the hierarchy of society. That's like an obvious surface level philosophical point. So that was nice to see. But not I mean he's a Randian type, but he doesn't really introduce that into a lot of the plot based off of my memory. He says JD is like a Nietzsche figure. Um, maybe because of the cynicism. But I mean, okay. It's disappointing that JD's arc is what it is on film because he of all people should know that um doing this elaborate doing this elaborate task at the end there without spoiling the movie. Um, that's not going to help his cause, and actually the media that's taking advantage of all the college students or the high school students, they're gonna betray him in a bad way by and he tries to do regime change in the high school. This is very repetitive for people who watch the sociology video, but so anyways, to respond for the good student, um it does make sense for JD with his smarts, with his Nietzsche archetype, someone who understands the dynamics of the the hierarchy of the high school. Doesn't make sense for him to try and do regime change because that's futile. As Veronica says, someone else is going to replace her. And so the idea that this outcast in high school would do this like totally, Hollywood version of a caricature like a Riddler type character, that's just that character doesn't have to turn out that way. And so so there's that. Yeah. Anyways. Um, Alan, if you're still here, Alan Wilhelm. I have not read that Buchanan book. I do, but I think it's pretty true. A lot of that stuff. Yeah, I gotta watch Pump Up the Volume. I haven't watched that. I think that was Oscar Toe who's hyping it. Gotta watch that. Gotta watch it. Clueless captured the hierarchy of high school really well. Yeah. Where are the M&M? Oh, okay. You guys gonna make me do it, aren't you? You guys gonna make me do it. M&M's are right here, Minone. M&M's are right here. I'm saving them. I'm saving them. All right. Should I eat them? No, I can't. I can't do it. Can't do it. We'll get to that. Clueless. Yeah, Clueless is. I don't know where Heather's was filmed. Clueless was more about the California. You know, if you've ever seen the movie Valley Girl with Nicolas Cage, another 80s high school movie that they turned into a musical, and both of them were terrible. Heather's ones was worse. I remember staying up late one night watching. It was like 4 in the morning, and the Valley Girl musical. I think it was like 2020, 2021, and yeah, you can imagine. Yeah, I don't know. Clueless kind of that one's a little more honest about how bad the main character is, the blind spots with the main character. The one in Heather's, they try and make it look like Veronica's. She's got all her eggs in her basket. I don't know. It's like she's her own worst enemy. Does a lot of counterproductive stuff. Gets involved with crazy people and then doesn't like that they're crazy. You know what I mean? She wants to have it both ways. She wants to be friends with everybody. It's very, very over socialized behavior, even though she's not that type like Alicia Silverstone. What's her name? Is it Claire? Yeah, Claire. Cher's the name. Um, and I don't know. Everything kind of blows up in her face based off of what I remember. Those are the two movies a friend of mine recommended. It was Clueless and Heather's. And Clueless was like, okay, this is obviously a movie not made for me. And then I got to the first like 15-ish minutes of Heather's thinking it was going to be that same thing because it looks, crisp, clean, you know, dreamy 80s, especially that intro where they're playing cricket, I think it is. And then even when you get, she's walking down the hallway. What is your damage, Heather? And then they get to the cafeteria. It's like, okay, all of this is so formulaic. And then then Christian Slater introduces the film. And so that's the problem. It's like that character doesn't have to be a villain. He could be a smart person who plays it close to the chest, but instead he flies off the handle. The snappy. What is it? The snappy shack. Anyways. She does help a lot of the Heathers, but then there's that one when the last Heather tries to get everybody's signature and she reveals who she truly is. She knows she's at the top of the hierarchy, and it's kind of this is very cringe and I apologize, but it's like that scene in Mean Girls where Lindsay Lohan becomes the queen bee. Uh, Rachel McAdams, I think that's her. She gets dropped down a step, and Lindsay Lohan kind of does regime change and becomes the leader of that pack. And she sort of recognizes what it's like to have that power. And then she neglects her real friends. What is it? Well, the goth girl. What's the? I'm forgetting the characters' names, which is a good thing. You're not supposed to have that stuff memorized, but that is like what's happening in like the middle latter half of Heathers, where she's trying to make peace with a lot of the Heathers, which that's like a admirable part of the movie. But anyways, does Ace have? Oh, okay, okay. Minone, Minone. No, man, I'm good. I'm good. Don't worry about me. You know, another good movie is To Die For by Gus Van Sant, who don't look his name up because there's some cringy stuff. But he made this movie about with Nicole Kidman. Someone was asking about my type. Um, we've gotten far away from the original topic, but Nicole, that movie really describes women in all aspects. Very underrated movie, and it also describes the weak spots of men too. Because Matt Dillon, who I'm sure ladies fixated with, but that was like the perfect '90s actor. You know, that was like Steven Dwarf, but different physiognomy. It's hard to describe. He was like your everyman, you know. But Matt Dillon does everything for this woman, and he's giving her good news. He tells her, you know, because she's determined to be this anchor, and she'll get it at all costs. She'll compromise her values. I mean, her real values is getting the job, so it's like it creates this very like hyper capitalistic Randian figure. And her husband just says, "Hey, look, maybe you shouldn't pursue that job. It's not pragmatic. And besides, we're making lots of money because he owns his own bar or his family's connected. And I think there's a hint that his family's like connected with the mafia. So, I mean, you got this wholesome suburban fantasy of, you know, you got the all-American family, you don't got to worry about money, but she is heartbroken because her husband is getting in the way of her career, and so she kills her husband. And it's so it's also based on the Patty what is it? Patty Smart? What was the 90s trial where wife killed her husband? Might have been Patty something. Anyways, um and so the way Nicole Kidman, that's probably her best role in her whole career. And that's a lot. It's a lot of stuff. Might be the best thing in her whole career is this To Die For, because it's really a character study of this woman who's pursuing the wrong goals and then at the expense of the stuff that really matters. And it's a tragedy. It's a modern Shakespearean tragedy because she has everything right in front of her. And then she has this line, which I think about this whenever I'm like, I think about this to kind of check myself, to walk things back, check priorities. She says, "You're not doing, what's the point of doing something if nobody's watching?" And that's, to her, that's like that's a self-help motivational statement. And I hear that and it's like, this is a psychopath. This is, and she's literally, she's the villain in the story. So what does that say? What does that say about people like Veronica Sawyer? You know, when Lindsay Lohan gets too greedy as the queen bee, we recognize that that is a character flaw. It's not femme fatale. It's not an aesthetic. This is wrong. We have to stop this behavior. Betty Finn, I think that I think that's the name. The Betty Finn character knows the hierarchy, is aware of it. This is the ideal character in Heathers. Knows the score and doesn't wanna, fight for power. It's not what it's about. It's about being on the sidelines, and there's no shame in that. Betty Finn if Betty Finn got with Christian Slater, nothing bad would happen. Winona Ryder has some responsibility in Jason Dean's escalation. So there's something to be said about that. And a lot of historians overlook this, okay? We really need a revisionist take on all these queen bees. I don't know if anyone knows what is it? 7 Minutes in Heaven. That's another movie. It's got a young Jennifer whoever wrote that comment, you're vindicated. But you're wrong, but you're wrong. That's another one with a young Jennifer Connelly. I think this was before Career Opportunities with Frank Whaley. I haven't seen that one. Everybody that's like the little dark age of teen comedies. Um, that one, she is clearly the good character, and then her friend who, would be like the main lead in Clueless. It's very obvious that the blondie, she's in the wrong. But today, you would have, characters like that are promoted as a complicated character, and hey, we don't do the right thing all the time either. So who are we to judge? And it's like, oh, wait a second, man. Who are you closer to? Are you closer to Betty Finn, or are you this total it girl? This total it girl. Ace will love Over the Edge. All right, I'll check that out. I'm gonna do that a check. I gotta clean my. All right, of course, of course. Have you seen American Graffiti? Of course, I've seen that movie. Of course, I've seen it. Very cool movie. That is like peak Americana. I think that's George Lucas, right? Yeah, George Lucas made that, which is kind of weird. But yeah, dude. Yeah, who is Manon? Manon, to kind of play into what you're saying. Who is the blonde? Who's the blondie in the car? Who is that? It's making Richard Dreyfuss, you know, it's dominating his whole character. Who is she? But that's very wholesome. And yeah, man, night cruising, night cruising. Oh, uh-oh. Somebody in my class. Oh, no, no, no. Somebody in my class found this channel. My goodness. My goodness. So true. And it's so true. Um, can't think of her name. Okay. Well, can we reel it in the chat, please? Can we please have some self-restraint? Um, oh, dude, I'm sorry. Jack Burden, if he's still Jack Burden. Okay, okay. Have you ever seen True Romance? Of course, of course. Dude, True Romance. There you go. There's your. But we don't want Christian Slater to be like a martyr. But like that whole, I don't know, that's kind of cringe because Patricia Arquette, that whole character is nah. That's not ideal. But, hypothetically, if she had a different background and, they just watch kung fu movies, that would be wholesome. That would be cool. Yeah, true romance. Alright, we could probably bring in our guy Jack. If he's still here. I don't know if he's in the chat anymore. Uh, uh, I wanna I like his content, but yeah, he defends. Oh, you know who I'm talking about? Oh, and he slams you're talking about Razor Fist. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I don't know why you would slam Rothbard as a libertarian. Seems counterintuitive. And he's a Buchanan guy too, so it's not like he's allergic to social conservative views. I don't understand the intention behind that. Oh, bass guitarist, you're the Weird Al, Devo, Michael Jackson. I don't think you're here, but that's pretty good. Did you guys ask anything else? You kinda you kind of have overtones of Nick Cage's Whoa, whoa, what? Cognitive dissonant from Wild at Art. That's one of my favorites, man. You know that scene where Willem Dafoe, the first scene with Willem Dafoe. Does anyone know what I'm talking about? Dude, that scene, and it's got Chris Isaac's soundtrack in the background. Someone please look at that up. Please look that up. I can't play it for you, but that scene pretty much sums up David Lynch's career. You got the weird humor, you got this, like, menacing tone, and then you got the characters, and it's a roundabout table. I I just dropped the M&Ms. Okay, Jack Defoe. Oh, man. Alright. Jack, I don't know, this kinda went off the rails. I'll send you the link. How do I do that again? Copy to clipboard. Uh, Willem Dafoe's also in The Northman. I gotta see this thing. And Nicole Kidman? What am I waiting for, man? What am I waiting for? Alright, we're letting our guy in the studio. Oh, man. Man, I wanna watch that Ed Dutton video. I was thinking about getting him on the show. Would that be funny? I think he'd go for it too. I just think that would be interesting. What do we got? Alright, here we go. Oh, I didn't even answer this question. I'm sorry. Cognitive dissonant. How do I rate the Bill and Ted films? I haven't watched the second one. I like the first one. That film actually got me interested in Joan of Arc. I know that that's kind of random, but whatever it takes, I guess. But yeah, first Bill and Ted I really like. Hey, what's up, man?
Hey Ace, how you doing? How's my audio?
Very good. It's coming through clear.
Awesome, perfect.
Awesome.
So
Yeah.
to completely take the stream or back to a much earlier topic, I actually have a really great story about Heather's because
Really? Okay.
my fiance pulled a joke on me and my roommate because she pitched Heather's to us as a straight laced like 80s teen movie. Like nothing to it, just like the normal high school drama. So of course, me and my roommate are just rolling our eyes to this movie, like, "Oh, come on, really? Of course." And then all of a sudden, they just start murdering people, and I completely fall in love with this movie. Obviously, there are problems with it, but there's something about going into something like that completely blind and getting like a totally genuine reaction to kind of like the turn in it. And it obviously like it kind of shows its hand before that, but if you're not really prepared for it, it's easy to read as just like a very unsubtle 80s movie. But I do enjoy that movie quite a lot. I don't know how good it is, but I like it. I'll put it that way.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if it does show its hand because like I said, that dreamy intro where they're like putting the buns in their hair, whatever that is. And I guess like when like Winona Ryder gets bonked on the head, that's like the first little hint. But I don't know, but before Christian Slater enters the picture, it's like I was totally set for it to be like, a Clueless John Hughes movie, but
Right, exactly. And that's very much what it feels like, right?
right. And it is a black comedy, but a lot of the satire. But yeah, I think when those two jocks go up
That's
to Christian,
exactly the scene I'm thinking of.
that's exactly what I'll like. Wait a second. This isn't my wholesome 80s fantasy.
And there's a part in it, and I can't remember because it has been almost a year since I've seen it. Where at the funeral of these two jocks, it's either one of their dads or the high school football coach has this moment where he basically tearfully admits that his star player or his son, I can't remember which, right,
Yep.
was was found naked with another man. And that's such a twisted scene, but it's really genuinely funny.
Right. No, it's a lot of that stuff I think is timeless. But yeah, that's pretty good. I just- yeah, I think that was the dad, if I remember right. Cause yeah, I don't
Yeah,
think
I
there's like
think
a
you're right.
coach character, but yeah. Um oh man. I just hold on a sec. Yeah, I didn't know what to expect because this person who introduced this to me in high school, I probably that probably should have been a hint in and of itself that
Fair
this
enough,
wasn't gonna
right?
be. But like I said, this was like I got a double recommendation with Clueless, and so it totally fit the brand. But it was just more than I anticipated. Yo, Paul Fahrenheit, what's going on, buddy? Oh, I know. Yeah, Fahrenheit. Yeah, that was confusing the first time I saw it. Yeah. Awesome. Yeah, that's one of the unsung movies. And I just think that's a perfect timeline too, because that's 1989. I was fighting someone. It might have been Vingol in the chat if he's still here. That's the perfect death of the 80s with this string of feel good, upbeat themes. And then you got this dark comedy, which totally it really belongs in the 90s, Heather's. And it's right at that end of the decade. And I would say that the 80s ended in 1992, but nevertheless, still a perfect segue into the 90s. All the nihilism and the state of young people is totally represented with all these gullible high school students. Um but yeah. No, I don't know. I hope that's not just Winona Ryder influencing me, but yeah, that's a movie that I go back to. Um, it kind of has everything. It has like the young receptiveness to it. It's got the satire, social commentary. So maybe it's like a hodgepodge. It's like a young Tarantino, like True Romance. It's got this like young proto Tarantino type film, and so that was, I guess that was always the attraction. A good soundtrack too. There's a lot of like those '80s drums from that you would hear on like a Bonnie Tyler album. But a lot of just, I don't know, a lot of like unsettling. It's actually closer to like a David Lynch movie because it's got this weird unsettling thing. But anyways, very hypnotic. Very um oh, are we starting a civil war in the chat here? It's just yeah, yeah, Fahrenheit. Good call, good call. I'm sure Paul appreciates 80s teen red wedding. I don't know what that is. I don't know. I still have a lot of blind spots with a lot of like I said, career opportunities. I just don't haven't gotten to a lot of this stuff that people probably take for granted. Oh, here you go. Here you go. Paul Fahrenheit's got a question for you. All the Kingsmen. Yeah. Do you have a
Yeah,
take on
that
that?
is the source of the name, right? I mean, it's a very general question, but it is by far my favorite book. I think it was Distributus the other night who was talking about the great American novel, and I believe his take was that Moby Dick is the only contender. And I love Moby Dick. I've This is really stupid, but every year they hold a sequential reading of Moby Dick, which takes roughly 28 hours, in New Bedford, Massachusetts, at the church featured in the start of that book.
Oh
And I have
man.
been to that. I was the only person under the age of 60. And that was a really stupid decision. But my point is, I do love Moby Dick. But I think that in the same way that Steinbeck is kind of the writer of California, I think that Robert Penn Warren, his version of the South in that is almost perfect. I know some people like Faulkner more than him, and that's a fair enough take, right? But I think that at least the part of the country I am in, is described so well in that book. And that's even aside from the narrative and the themes running through it, that I just find it completely and totally captivating. And that's not a great review of the book, nor is it meant to be, but I can't endorse it enough. If you haven't read it, you should. And the movie's not half bad either.
Oh, okay, okay. Yeah, I think that's what Paul. Yeah, I think that's what Paul was asking.
Oh,
Yeah, yeah. I don't know. I don't know. For Cal, for California, I don't know. It's like my parallel because I haven't read enough. Is a lot of our like movies here are not really ones we should be proud of, probably. So, well, probably reducing a lot of the culture to a caricature. But I don't know. I don't know what. I guess like Once Upon a Time in Hollywood would be probably what I would recommend as the All American California movie if I had to pick one, because it's kind of got the best and worst aspects all in one movie. If I had to pick something that wasn't just the cliches that I was mentioning earlier.
well,
But
it's odd not to just relentlessly shill the same book, but there's a section in All the King's Men where the main character essentially goes through a crisis and drives in one sitting all the way from New Orleans, where a lot of the book takes place, to Long Beach, California in one go. And it's written as kind of this massive screed. And it oddly enough, it echoes a point that I can't remember which episode of the podcast you do with Thomas and Paul,
mm,
but it's that idea of like California is where you go, and I'm paraphrasing this right, like when your luck runs out, when there's no money in the bank account and someone's looking for you. And that's obviously both true as kind of the narrative of the country, but also the narrative of the character. And obviously, I'm an East Coast guy, right? I've lived in, within 100 miles of the coast basically my entire life, but it's fascinating, right? That even in that narrative, which is very much not of that, right? The narrative of the Deep South, California features in it.
Yeah. No, that is true. That is true. Um, I'm sorry, Paul. I'm sorry. Yeah, that's probably a bad answer, but just off the top of my head, probably. I don't know. I should probably pick like a Western because I think that's a lot more true to the history of California.
Oh, hey, Reed Chesterton won in the chat. That is my one of my greater influences. Actually, that's my high school literature and history teacher, who is a reactionary in my the school I went to. Very influential on me.
Oh, where is that at?
Reed Chesterton won in the chat.
Oh, check out.
He
Gotcha.
actually, I helped him. He got, and not to dox him at all, but he got let go from a position for political reasons. And so
Oh,
my
really?
friends and I helped him move. He's in a different area of the country. And on the move, I will give you no specifics at all, obviously, but we actually stopped through LSU's campus and walked around where Robert Penn Warren taught. And it's just an interesting piece of history, right? Went to a lot of
Gotcha.
the places that Huey Long built and kind of feature obliquely in that novel.
Man. Going back to my 8 hour walk. Yeah, good luck to you, Paul. Love this guy. Love this guy. Oh man.
All right, there's a minor reunion going on in your chat.
Oh, is there? Really? Really? What do we got here? Nice.
So Ace, I'll be perfectly honest. This is a moral failing of mine. I think I have probably seen maybe 3 movies in my entire life, and I think 2 of them are Ice Age and its sequels. Uh, so I feel bad. You've recommended a lot of movies, and I really do need to watch more of them. But so
Yeah.
is the most recent Tarantino film. I also have the inability to remember the names of movies, which is probably hindering me. Would you actually recommend that? Because I have kind of a lukewarm reaction to Tarantino. And I understand he's considered a master, but I find his dialogue a little bit irritating and kind of
Yeah.
overdone. If that makes sense. So is it worth seeing?
I think that's an accurate description. Yes, I think honestly, I think that his newest one would be a good one to recommend. If you don't mind, like watching a long movie, like it's like 2.5 hours, but uh, putting that aside, I think that's the only obstacle that I would recommend against. But if that's not a problem, then I would say that because everyone recommends Pulp Fiction, and I don't know. Reservoir Dogs is also a good intro, and the fact that that's his first film is pretty cool. Um,
I like Reservoir Dogs. It feels, at least to me, and I'm not very deeply involved in the film world, so if this is an unoriginal take, you're free to tell me. It feels oddly like a stage play in the sense that it is very much all of the action, with notable exceptions, takes place in one room, and I think that's kind of fun just from the perspective of it being such a limited film. Much in the same way that I actually, one of my other favorite movies is 12 Angry Men for that same reason, right?
gotcha. Yeah, that was shown to a class of mine at I think in middle school. Now that I think about it, um, but just wanna make sure I get this right. Um, yeah, Tarantino's like the Nietzsche of Hollywood. Kind of, it invites the best, the creative minds, and the spurgs, as you can imagine. So that's the only polarizing thing.
Now, what was Nietzsche's opinion on feet?
On yeah, that's I'm not sure. That's I'll leave that up to the chat to decide. But it's it's one of those things. For everybody who says, it's just a hot, he's kind of like a fanboy who got to live his dream. because he just kind of throws in all his influences and wears it on his sleeve. You would probably also like to kind of get like a novel on screen represented right. Not that it's based on one, but The Hateful Eight, another one of his longest, but that's very, I think, respectful to the Western genre, and dialogue I think is a lot less cringy, because I think the stuff that you're talking about specifically, I think that's more of his 90s work,
Hmm.
the gangster uh side of it. This one is kind of trying to breathe life into that bygone era that a lot of people today just kind of neglect. A lot of the Wild Bunch and what is it? The He's got like his very niche interests, and I think with that one, it kind of takes a back seat and really gets into the stays true to the Americana genre. So that would be another one.
Well,
There's
well,
all
that's
go for it.
well, that's one of the things that I do find interesting, right? Is that there is kind of a there is kind of an odd element of Americana to classic film, right? And as that has kind of been lost and film has gone international, especially in the era of every movie being made for China, we've kind of seen that Hollywood charm almost completely go away. And there's still, it exists, but it almost exists in reference to itself. Like Once Upon a Time in Hollywood has that charm, but really because it's kind of pointing out like, hey, remember this, or Argo is another movie like that, you know.
That's
And
right.
so that's something I just find kind of interesting and odd.
Yeah, well, yeah, Hollywood. I mean, kind of on the nose of it. It's really like off brand, or what is it? Shipping its organic roots to the world, and it's so it really is kind of like a globalist thing to kind of lose touch with where a lot of this stuff kind of came from. And it's funny because you got a lot of people that rip off the Tarantino genre. I think they call it the what is it, quintessential films. And so that's another funny like subgenre of that you might be interested in. I was trying to pull up some. A funny one is like well, hold on. See, I have to work on this level where something that is entertaining for me is very, very odd. So I can't just like recommend the stuff that like I would put on a list. So I'm trying
No,
to
no,
be
you,
aware.
I have seen probably more bad movies than any human being on the planet. So I don't know if
Really?
you can really, yeah, actually, I was kind of joking a little bit about only seeing a few movies. I have kind of inexplicable gaps in my movie watching. Like there's a lot of deep cuts I've seen, and then I've never seen The Godfather, things like that, that I really just should address and haven't got around to. But I'm all for kind of odd, weird movies. My One of my really good friends is almost an auteur. He's a really, really gifted product designer, but he's really into kind of art house movies. So I've watched a lot of weird, 1950s Swedish films with him, where everyone's
Ah,
very,
okay.
grim and dour, and I'm quite sure that they're artistic. I'm just not sure how. So
Right.
I'm up for weird stuff, right?
Yeah, well, I gotta ask at the outset, do you got a take on like David Lynch, for example? Do you have any?
So my good friend, he loves David Lynch, and this is mildly sacrilegious. I kind of find him a little bit much, like, and I understand I haven't seen his best, but from what I've seen of him, I feel a similar way actually about a lot of, and I know this isn't directly accurate, but a lot of more surreal and kind of absurdist work, where at some point, like, I feel the exact same way about Kafka, where I just want to like pick him up and shake him and be like, tell me what you're talking about, please. Because at a certain point, I feel like like I'm almost being laughed at in an odd way. And I'm like,
Yeah,
look, my reaction is very much like, look, maybe being confusing is the point, but it's kind of like that old forum thing where it's like, haha, I only tricked you into thinking I was retarded. Where it's like, if you're confusing and your point is, haha, I've confused you, it's like that's not much of a point, is it?
Yeah, yeah, it's he's probably inspired a lot of people who probably take that to an extreme, but like obviously something like Twin Peaks is pretty structured, pretty normal, and Blue Velvet's like the first that to bring it back to Heather's, the ultimate trick is Blue Velvet for that being a totally normal Hitchcock movie for the first 40 minutes and then subverting the audience with for anyone who's aware of that movie, they know exactly when the shift takes a turn. And that would be those would probably be the two structured. I'm curious when you said like David Lynch's best. I'm curious to know what that is because even my preferences for him are probably not the majority opinion since his stuff is literally all over the place. So I don't know. Do you have something in mind when you said his
Yeah.
peak?
So, like I said, I really haven't given him much of a fair shake. I watched like a good bit of Twin Peaks and just really couldn't get into it. And like I
Okay.
said, I'm not trying to cast judgment on his entire like body of work, but that didn't grab me. And so I have enough people who I trust who tell me his stuff is worth my time. It's just kind of it hasn't made it to the top of the heap yet, as far as prioritizing goes. But I'm willing to give it a shot, right?
Yeah. Um, that would probably be my
Actually,
answer.
wait. There's one movie he's done that I really do love. Dune.
What's that?
I do like his version of Dune.
Okay.
Uh, again, it's not like it's a very limited film, but I kind of like it. I can't really
All
give
right.
you a good reason more than I like it. Uh, the casting is very, very odd. The sets are very odd, and the
Right.
pacing is kind of trash. But it's kind of charming. I really have no better argument than that.
Are you willing as like a go-to method, would you be willing to kind of like look past a lot of like cuz I don't know, when I'm watching a movie like probably the most recent example like The Batman. When I first watched that opening scene, it was very frustrating for me cuz it was already confusing and the camera angles were kind of throwing me for a loop, but I got like probably halfway through it thinking I don't understand what I think about this and I hate that because I just want to I don't know what's so hard especially at this point when you watch so many movies you should be able to pick up on these things but there are times where it's I don't know I feel like it's me. So would you like be willing to like rewatch stuff through like a different lens and see if like that helps by any chance?
Yeah, no, I'm definitely willing to. I think that I am, and maybe this is just like the ultimate Zoomer take of media on media, but I am somewhat hesitant to for the take of, and this is not specific to anything you've said, but like, oh, you just didn't understand it. If you watch it like this, like it's kind of the Gnostic take on media, which is the most chin stroking, pretentious thing I've ever said. But you know what I mean, right? That it's like, oh, the perfect example, right, is this whatever the Snyder cut of that movie
Oh
that came
yeah,
out,
the
right? Which is like,
Justice
oh,
League, yeah.
this wasn't trash. You merely didn't have my version of this. You didn't have the key to unlock it. And look, like there are some films that I do believe reward multiple viewings. Like this is a dumb example, but one of my favorite television shows, probably the only television show I really love, is Arrested Development. And the first 3 seasons are very dense, and I've watched it enough times that I've kind of gotten the main arc. But there are still little gags and little references that you don't pick up on, and that's a silly example. It's comedy, but I definitely think I'm up for that more generally.
Right, and I think one of the disadvantages for our generation is a lot of the stuff that came before the French New Wave, the post Bonnie and Clyde influence in a post Hays Code era of Hollywood. I think a lot of like Zoomers probably don't even give some of Hitchcock stuff like a fair shake. and a lot of, the Bogart films and noir. And it's weird because, a lot of us like to LARP with the neo noir aesthetic. A lot of the Ryan
Mm.
Gosling films, which kind of ride that line. And so you would think watching these old timey 40s detective movies, you would think that'd be right up our alley, but it seems like there is something about the fact that it's that old and the dialogue is so dated. That's enough to just completely turn us away. And I wish there was a way for us to just grab it and just make peace with it. And I just feel like a lot of us, it's going to be one of those things we never get to because there's so many movies and we're trying to play catch up. But I want the, whatever that is, the silent generation. I want to like their stuff. It's just it's a little polarizing because it's just not for us. It's not made for us. And
Well,
I
that's
don't know.
fair. I weirdly I feel like part of it too, because I watched Lawrence of Arabia a while ago, and one of the things that I've realized is how how much longer attention spans were. Because even though these are relatively
That's right.
short movies, not Lawrence of Arabia, but a lot of the like black and white films are limited in length. They're much slower paced, and the camera work is so much slower, right? Like just limited by technology and how much time people had put into it. But I mean, like if you watch even a quote unquote slow normal movie, like I watched in Richmond, Virginia, which is the urban hellhole I'm rapidly escaping. There's a really cool old Art Nouveau, 100 and some year old theater that shows a lot of like art house stuff. It basically looks like a uh, a level from Bioshock Infinite. But
All
they
right.
showed this A24 film, Green Knight, which I didn't love. It's incredibly subversive, but it is a like a slow quote unquote movie. But I kind of had this moment where even in the slow sections, it's kind of sensory overload. There's so much, and it's artistically done. I'm not going to deny, but you watch that back to back with. I remembered the name of the '60s Swedish film. I watched The Seventh Seal, which was quite good. But you watch something like that, which is you know still a relatively modern film in the grand scheme of things, and that is there are so many more just like camera angles and things happening. You know, you watch something like even Casablanca, and there are establishing shots in that you just watch. You watch him walk into the building, and that takes a while, and you kind of have to wait for that. And that's not bad by no means, right? But it is just a slower pace of media.
No, for sure, for sure. And just to speak on that point, there's one scene specifically in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. I think if you ever watch it, this specific point, even if I said nothing about it, and you watched it, this point I think you would bring up because it's exactly what you're describing. There's a scene towards the end ish, like right before the climax, where everyone is just going home and everybody's in their different parts of the story. The main actress, Sharon Tate, she's just finished watching a movie, so she's just walking out of the theater. DiCaprio and Brad Pitt are driving home, and Timothy Oliphant, he's just riding his motorcycle. It's all the characters just winding down, and it's also towards the end of the film, so that helps. But I don't know. It's probably because there's this 60s song playing or 60s cover playing over the top of it that might help. But there's really nothing happening in the scene that's really noteworthy. But that's kind of the charm of a lot of the movie is just watching people do stuff that's that we would just do while we daydream or whatever. So stuff like that I start to appreciate more, and maybe that'll help me understand some of the older movies because maybe that's what they're getting at. I don't know because I don't have that older perspective. But
Well, oddly, one of the movies that really got me kind of started on a kick of more atmospheric films is another movie that I watched very late, relatively. Is I watched Blade Runner maybe 9 months ago,
the
and that's the
original,
movie, the original, yeah. And then shortly after, I watched 2049 and obtained a new personality. But
right?
it was odd to me because that's a movie that, again, talking about media, I had because it was kind of a part of the like millennial nerd TM culture. I had just adopted a lot of kind of secondhand opinions about that movie without realizing that that is a very slow atmospheric movie. And that's not,
Right.
like I said, it's not, that's something very obvious if you watch the film. But in much the same way that kind of like The Matrix is a good example of a movie that has been kind of ruined by imitation, and
Yeah.
like it's difficult to watch that now. Blade Runner has held up much better, but it is similar in the sense that there's been so much kind of fanboying around it that it has completely distorted kind of the perception of the product, if we're going to go, a little bit too businessy about it. Does that make sense?
No, for sure. Yeah, like when Nicolas Cage does a role, you
Right.
know,
Yeah.
it's like, but wait, you gotta put it in its context. Like it wasn't a meme until this movie, so you can watch all that other stuff and not have it be ruined. But for everybody else, it's like, oh my gosh, all I can think of is this, this saturated version. But yeah, that's too bad. You were talking about Blade Runner as far as pacing. Have you seen Eyes Wide Shut?
I have not. No.
Okay, that's another one very similar to Blade Runner, and I would just throw in the 2049 version as far as to draw a reference. I can imagine some people watching 2049 and saying that Ryan Gosling's character is boring. And how
Hmm.
can you have that be the main character when he doesn't even do that much? And a similar critique was given to Tom Cruise in Eyes Wide Shut. It's him like Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. He's just wandering around the city, and that'll be like a 20-minute scene. And you would think because it's Stanley Kubrick that people understand there's an angle to that. But I'm thinking of this one broad. She reviewed it, and tell me if this sounds familiar. She's talking about how this male character is not interesting, doesn't get it, and she really sympathizes with the female character because she's this dominant presence in the film just because she has more lines, and she's the personality of the film. And it's almost like you have to teach somebody, like, look, the Tom Cruise, Ryan Gosling character, that's you. That's stock default character. And the reason why, it's like I said this on another stream, people think like the main character has to be this action star. And maybe because this is late 90s, that's what people project onto Tom Cruise. But the fact that you have the main character just doing menial tasks, that's not a detriment to the film. It's almost like you got to look at it through a different lens just to understand what's happening. And so, like, that's how I was when I watched the first Blade Runner. It was just, I don't know. It was difficult because I didn't really, to me, all the interesting stuff was at the end with the what's the bad guy's name? The I forget, but to me that's normal to me because I'm used to like a big action scene being this very prominent thing. And I just think a lot of people kind of write off everything in between that. And really, that might be like if 2049, for example, that's the charm. That's what resonates with Zoomers. So it's almost like we could use that to make sense of some of the past films. Like you said, Casablanca, it's just one scene of just kind of introducing everybody, and that's okay. That's not a throwaway. That's not filler. And I don't know. It's almost like we got to teach our generation how to watch movies
No, it's
because
true. Well,
there's disadvantages just for us.
it is very much. It goes back to that old like Marshall McLuhan line, right? Like the media is the message, and I think Neil Postman is kind of a goofy guy. Like I read Amusing Ourselves to Death, and it's got probably three good points that are a little bit overwrought in a very short book. But it is something to be said for the fact that like by virtue of the limitations in an art form, you do kind of not only I guess shape how it is enjoyed, but also shape like kind of what can be expressed in it. And I think that like as kind of new forms of media come to prominence, at least in like the past, maybe I should qualify this. It almost kind of pushes out. You kind of have a limited space for media in your brain, and as one kind of rises to more prominence, it's almost like a zero sum game. where it's like, okay, if this much of your brain is devoted to the speed of Twitter, which I'll admit probably too much of mine is, it makes it much more difficult to slow down to the pace of, let's say, you know, the 80s version of slow and atmospheric, or the 1940s version of slow and atmospheric, or like heaven forbid some 800-page Russian tome about aristocrats whining at each other. I say that as in jest, right? I love Russian novels, but you know what I mean, right? Like it almost makes it, you've almost like gotten your body used to crack, and then it's like, okay, well, maybe my nicotine patches don't feel quite so good anymore. I've never done crack, but you understand the analogy.
You would think because we live in mass media culture, there would be more tolerance for this, these strange genres that, wouldn't get greenlit in the 50s or the 40s. So it's very confusing to me that, well, I mean, I guess because people just get condensed to one note, one dimensional types of films. But you would think the 21st century would be like the best of both worlds. You can have your old school, not as technically advanced films, and then as a bonus, look at all this cool stuff we can do with CGI. But it's like you said, the oversaturation is overriding our most basic interests, and yeah, I don't know. Maybe I mean, I can imagine like an older person watching some of these newer films and feeling like us watching the black and white movies. So it might be just a generational thing. I don't know. It's
Well, that's true. I feel like part of it though, and this dovetails nicely with our conversation about Tarantino, right? Which is, I think that the idea that maximum creativity is associated with complete maximum freedom is kind of a lie. And I think that in a certain way, restrictions breed creativity. So in much the same way that, well, Reservoir Dogs is quite a good film because Tarantino didn't really have much to work with, at least in the setting, right? Like you're stuck in one room. Or the Hays Code did restrict a lot of what could go on. And admittedly, after the Hays Code goes away, we see this explosion of media. But pretty quickly, that kind of like 70s era of auteur directors kind of starts to fade. And you can say, well, fair enough, economic changes happened, directors had less power. But it seems to me that as if it were true that having the maximum amount of kind of like freedom to express, and exposure to other media created like a better creative class, if we want to use that, then we would be living in the greatest era of art in history of the world. And I think that is manifestly untrue.
You said the 70s was
Well,
when.
so what I meant to say is, as the Hays Code disappeared, right? There's kind of this explosion and like riot of creativity, culminating in that kind of like 70s golden era. I don't know what people call it, the golden age, but that kind of like era of auteur directors making big hits, and that kind of slowly started to fade out. And this is not completely original. I've heard other people say this. Again, I don't know how true or false this is. I'm kind of spitballing here. Do you see what I'm going for?
Oh yeah. No, I hear you for sure. That's funny because I've heard Tarantino actually kind of tries to describe this on a Joe Rogan episode where he says that the 50s and the 80s were the worst decades for movies because there was the status quo standard. And
Okay.
obviously the political dynamic in the 50s is all of your monster movies aren't about monsters, they're about, well, I mean, technically they are because they're about communists. And so it's this very one-dimensional theme that kind of restricts creativity. And then in the 80s, bring it back to like the teen comedies, everything has to have a happy ending and everything is resolved. And so it's this fake Hollywood version of kind of scenarios. And he said that in the 70s and the 90s, that's when you have your Wild West directors do what you want. You can have your gritty New York neoliberal, be honest about it, look at the modernity in its unfiltered state. And then in the 90s too, you could show the nihilism, and by that point America is decadent in a kind of a different context, but people are showing that and showing how grotesque it is. So, and I forget what I don't know if it's just the industry picking its moments selectively, but as you said, because you kind of had the dissolution of the Hays Code, that makes sense why you get your weird movies in the 60s and the 70s. I don't know what valve was pulled for keeping everything confined in the 80s. I've heard one director, I don't know if it was John Carpenter or somebody else. Somebody said that kind of implied that there's a conspiracy that in the 80s there was this social conservative effort to minimize sexual content and while also allowing pro-war propaganda in a lot of the movies, your big 80s action movies. And
Which is that's an odd take because you could I feel like you could make the argument that there's less like gritty sexuality in the 80s, which fair enough. But I feel like kind of the 80s slasher flicks are kind of those are about as base as you can get, right? Like it's giant fake boobs and people getting stabbed to death. And I realize that's not everything, but I mean even action movies of the era, maybe okay, fair enough, right? Like it's not quite as gritty as something you'd have seen 10 years before, but it's still there and it's definitely different than what was appropriate, in the 50s, right?
right, and there was also a big scare. The Penelope Spheres, she did documentaries on heavy metal and punk scenes in LA. And it's kind of funny because she directed Wayne's World. She directed all these movies that make rock fans look bad. But one of her concerns was the fact that because you have slasher movies, it kind of has this anti-feminist angle to it, and it has this purity angle to it. And so that's kind of like the early stage. It's kind of like a Gamergate moment in a way, because you have this concern for how does media affect people's perception of you know political themes, sociology. And so it's almost like that was like a real concern in the 80s, where you kind of have this political dimension to the industry, whereas today it just I mean, I guess today's a little different because we're living in like the post Gamergate era, but it seems like the 80s you did kind of have this I don't know. Again, as Paul corrected me earlier, we should never say that like the elites are sympathetic to us, but you kind of have this I don't know, this weird like gap where with movies. I don't know exactly what it is, but it's just I'm trying to notice some patterns.
Well, it's odd because it does seem like the 80s was the last time really that the right in America had any type of cultural power. I realize I wasn't alive then, but it does seem like at the very least like there was some kind of pressure being exerted. Maybe it wasn't from the top, maybe it wasn't as strong as it could have been, but there was at least something there.
Yeah, I just can't imagine you have all those you're checking all those boxes, and I don't know. I guess you could argue that it's organic because you're living in this more, I don't know. It's hard to imagine, but I'm not sure. I'm just speculating because
Oh yeah, same, right? Like I have absolutely no sources on this. So one of the things, this is a slight tangent, but going off of Gamergate. So when we talked on my show, or maybe before, I can't remember, we spoke about the fact that I was in my first semester of college. I was kind of ambushed into a Gamergate class.
oh,
So
really?
so I'm in business school, right? And my first semester at a different school, I we had to take this seminar class. It was basically like a writing composition class. And I saw one that was game theory, and I'm like, oh great, like economic game theory, like that'll be right up my alley. And boy was I wrong. It was essentially critical analysis of video games.
Oh,
And
wow.
it was a trip. I kind of it's interesting you talking about writing for college and the limits you're in. I kind of always took the take of I'm going to write you the paper you will like the most, but make it kind of completely ridiculous to the outside. And so this whole class was bizarre, and actually is indirectly kind of responsible for how I ended up here because my take was, well, you're insane. Who's the opposite of you? You know, But I remember I wrote this paper, which is simultaneously the most pleased and most ashamed I've ever been of an A paper, where I baselessly claimed that Mrs. Pac-Man was a Japanese way of reestablishing the patriarchy by implying that women can't control themselves around food. To which my professor, who allegedly has a PhD, essentially gave me a perfect grade and was like, "This is an incredibly insightful piece of writing." Which is just amusing, right? At an institution that is allegedly, like of some quality, right? And they're just giving out A's to papers with absolutely no sources, right? It was literally, it came to me in a dream, was the source, right?
Oh, wow, man. No, dude, I cannot recommend enough. Please go to college. Any young person, please, you got to see it for yourself. And I don't think it's as dystopian as people picked. I'm from California, so if I can get through it, you can. I had one professor specifically who stood out in the same way that you're describing. You know, a total caricature. And it's funny because one of the things I mentioned on your show was the Battle of Berkeley. I think got mentioned in one of my classes, and it's just such a blast from the past. But obviously there's a way to do it. Like you said, there's a way to write. I don't think you're totally restrained even when you're writing stuff like this, especially in like I'm majoring in philosophy. I mean, you got so much wiggle room as a student. You could, and just like watching like academic agents videos, you can find your way around. I mean, even he in one of them talked about reading French Marxists and the framework that has and how it limits you in these certain regards. Again, a lot of people with their political development, there's a way to make this fun and not just a rigorous authoritarian teacher is making me write about liberal arts studies. But no, that is I see. I hear stories like that, and I that doesn't discourage me. That makes me think like it's like you're going to the carnival. The college campus is a nice place to meet reality face to face. But
Well, and there's something to it, which I mean, this goes back to what you were saying a little bit earlier, which is like at the very least, these people are fundamentally uncool. Like they're just so lame. Like what? Like you're just embarrassing. And again, like that doesn't necessarily mean he who is the least embarrassing wins, right? Like that's not
right,
true. But at
no,
the
no,
same time, it's like when the when this woman who's devoted her life to the study of something that quite literally doesn't matter is complaining about how there aren't any black people in BioShock because the engine physically could not render them. And she's like, well, that's an example of like epistemic and like what was the phrase she used? It was algorithmic discrimination. And I was like, what? Yeah, I just looked around the room and I was like, what? There has to be something going on here, And again, like there's the problem is like these people are in charge and there's a lot more of them than there are of us. But at the very least, they're like, say what you will, Lenin wasn't embarrassing. Like he was wrong, but
no,
he
I
wasn't cringe.
no, dude, that is so well put. Oh man, yeah, like when Lenin and Stalin we're just talking about this with Paul. These guys in bars, those guys are conservative by today. I know that's like a boomer take. That's a MAGA take, but oh, dude, that's fundamentally uncool. That is that is perfect. Oh, that's a little too low. Yeah, no, that's why, man. People gotta go back to the. People gotta know their roots. I see a lot. Again, I'm just saying, like one of the themes on this channel is pop culture. The like this movie festival thing that's ongoing right now. You know, looking at politics through that lens, having a Rolling Stone magazine angle, having like we were talking about earlier today, fanzines and punk and stuff like that. Lou Reed, some stuff like that. That is not just cool, but there's a lot of neglect for that side of the dissident right. And the philosophy videos, they're great, but man, that 2016 Breitbart, that Battle of Berkeley madness, I gotta salute my hat to the veterans of the meme war. So
Well, it's odd because I think Endeavor came out with a video a few days ago. I was listening to it on my way back from class, but he was talking about, and this is a bit grim, right? But talking about postmodern tyranny and kind of contrasting that with the modern tyranny that we saw in kind of the 20th century. And he talks about this concept of like, look, like the way that we are being controlled is through narratives, right? Like there literally isn't, you know, the BLM death squad outside who's going to force you to kneel. But there is a narrative, right? That, oh, we need to subscribe to this, set of principles that were, inherently sinful and horrible. And then 3 months later, it's wait, America is inherently good and perfect. And, the evil white supremacist super Nazis stormed the Capitol to get rid of it. And kind of in narrative control, that kind of translates into like real world political control. And obviously part of that social media and stuff that is kind of outside of our grasp. But there is something to be said for the fact that like a lot of these ideas that have kind of been weaponized were first seeded through media. And I agree that like decentralization of media hasn't necessarily yet produced this great explosion of art, but I think there is potential for it, genuinely.
right.
And I think that as the kind of halls of power push out more and more truly gifted people for unrelated reasons, right? You're going to create this, ideally, right? And who knows, an asteroid might hit the world tomorrow, but you create this groundswelling of people who want to create. And I may not be the most creative person, but I see people in our circles who are and are genuinely capable of creating art. And I think that that's the part I'm really excited for in these circles, is seeing that kind of grow and blossom, right?
Thank you for bringing it up, because I forgot, as I said earlier, regardless of our feelings of the people mentioned in these articles, but the reactionary chic article on New York Times, something like that, the Vanity Fair article that blew up a week or so ago, I look at that and I see a scene. I don't just see isolated YouTube channels talking about politics and philosophy. I see, like what I said at the top of the show or close to it, you got this hodgepodge. You got this, tight knit community. You got all kinds of stuff going on. And it's just like the CBGB thing. And I think, as you said, it's going to reach a peak. And I think already, we're too prominent to ignore. And I think that's only going to continue in the years to come. And I know some people might say, it's just one positive article. It's just, one blurb in the media and it doesn't mean anything. But I think a lot of this stuff, we're seeing the early phase of the success that we've been asking for years. And so I'm very optimistic. And I just think, like you said, we gotta embrace this kind of, I don't know if this is the right term, but like open tent, big tent. But just we got so many creative people. I remember Darren Beatty said on Twitter, we're gonna get to a point where there is so many talented people outside of academia, centralized media, and those people don't disappear. Those people make their indie scenes, and it's just like the gaming industry. The indie scenes are able to hold the rest of the industry hostage because they demand it. They must be heard. And the same thing I think is going to be happening with our scene. In what facet? I don't know. I just think they, especially the people that want to get involved politically, they're going to have views that are similar to us. It's pushing the Overton window. Tucker Carlson is not going to be the outlier. That's just going to be one of the people sitting at the table. So that's I think these are positive developments, and I think people should see it that way too. It's very exciting. I think we're living in the exciting times, and we should see this as a winning streak. We enjoyed the Thomas content, the Pete, Keones, Cajones, and I just think it doesn't end there. It's not just because we like watching it. You know, this is something that's as you said, blossoming.
Well, one of the things I'm also interested to see is I feel like, and I've kind of watched this happen, where the for a while and I'm not necessarily looking to take this into a more identitarian direction, but for a while, right, like the approved target of society has been a pretty narrow boat, right? Like for a long time, it was, you know, white guys of a certain class from a certain area, and as that group has kind of expanded, right, to well, white women, well, certain white women, right, like the Karens, right, and so now it's kind of growing and growing. It's almost like the number of people who you were almost required to push out has got to the point where it seems to be kind of an unsustainable purity spiral.
Right.
And now that doesn't mean that they eat themselves and then the day is saved, everything goes back to, you know, the golden era, right? Whatever that golden era is. But there is something somewhat hopeful about the fact that these people are, while grabbing power, right, explicitly, they are kind of making themselves less and less competent over time. You know, and I think you definitely see some of that in college, right? Where essentially, like, and I'll be perfectly honest, I'm guilty of this, right? You can skate by with remarkably little effort, you know, and you see people who
Exactly.
are, and now admittedly, like, there's a difference between skating by and skating by, right? And I think that if you're at college right now and you look around and you're like, wait a minute, aren't isn't this supposed to be the top X% of people? You know, like, there's something going wrong here. You know, and the things that are being rewarded are not the things that translate to kind of real world performance, you know? And it's created this atmosphere where it's like, you know what? Not only are you embarrassing, you're just bad, you know? And you see that both not creatively and in kind of other like real world metrics, right?
Right. I think another thing to keep in mind, a theme with those two articles I mentioned earlier, is they are both written by women, and one of them had a more intimate encounter with the dissident right. I forget her name, but the Vanity Fair one. You know, she's in there, and obviously she's just a passive observer, probably, if we had to guess. There's a saying about like, how do you know when you got a trend when it's not just a bunch of guys who are into something obscure? When you get women showing up to the concerts, now you got your new fad. This is the new craze, and I just I think women just stumbling into the dissident right. A friend of mine was telling me earlier. This isn't in reference to women, but you can imagine your average person, a woman no less, stumbling onto the Thomas 777 timeline. Okay. At the very least, and I think this is a feminine thing, it's going to spark some kind of interest, even if it's, from the opposite angle, even if it's obviously not glued into the, the historical references and so on. There's something unignorable about seeing stuff like that on the internet. And so that's why I say there's a scene here, and this is a long-term scene that people should invest right now, because I think this thing's going to really start mounting up as the years go on. But I would not say this if it was like a bunch of squares online just talking about. I mean, not saying that's what it is now, but if you just had a bunch of people that were, like academic or wrong word. If you had like aristocratic types that are just doing their thing with like minor audiences, I think that would be cause for concern. But I don't think that's what we're seeing. We're seeing people that want to interview some people in our spheres, and I think that's a win every time. And so anyways, that might have been like a repeat of the last one, but
This is slightly off topic and not to just like fanboy about this, but honestly, like Thomas's content is great. Thomas's Twitter posting about Jar Jar Binks. Now that is the real reason I pay attention to him, if I'm going to be perfectly honest.
I
Every
agree.
time
I
he
agree.
posts, it just makes me laugh because it is both readable in Jar Jar Binks speak and however Thomas types on Twitter, which can only be really read in his voice. And it's the funniest combination of things, which is probably only amusing to an incredibly niche selection of people. But that's the kind of humor that kills me, right?
No, it is a crime. It is a crime that that man does not have a television show. This is the kind of thing, again, like to give like a specific example, Gene Simmons from Kiss saw Van Halen touring and he said, "Stop the presses. This is the new thing. This is what's gonna." I mean, I don't know if he said this, but this is gonna define the '80s, which it did. And it's like you just know it's intuition. To bring it back to philosophy, it's G.E. Moore's intuition when you really got something that you got to hold on to. And Thomas is not nothing. Thomas is not your run of the mill political commentator. And it's not even just the humor of it, okay? He's firing on all cylinders. And you would just have to be so stuck in the DC, rose-colored glasses to say, "Oh, that's, like BAP, oh, it's just this. It's whatever. It's there's nothing to it." I disagree. This is something that mainstream people need to be aware of. It's we are too spoiled to have this just be for us. This has to be something that is shared across the world. So I agree. I agree with what you're saying. And I don't
I
think Thomas would be who he is if he stuck with politics. You know what I'm saying? So to emphasize, the scene, it's a hodgepodge. That's what makes it a scene. It's not a one note. It's not a venue that plays one type of music. It's this weird band of misfits. So
well, and I also feel like because I was someone who was not involved and kind of thought the whole like alt right 1.0 was a bunch of autistic spurging, but I've been really impressed with generally how respectful people have been of each other's differences on kind of ostensibly really core issues, right? Like, for instance, like you and I are both Christian, but come from fairly opposed theological traditions, right? And obviously, like, if we really wanted to get into that, that could turn nasty. I don't think it would with you and I, but you know what I mean? Like, there's that potential. But I think there's kind of this truce that seems to be fairly well respected, obviously with notable incidences to the contrary, that has really created kind of a healthy environment, at least in the places I'm in.
yeah, I mean, I think, at least for me personally, I can imagine, like, if I got into Twitter in 2015 on the political side, I could easily see, myself spurging out and, losing patience and being blackpilled. And I honestly owe it probably to watching all the arcs of other people, people like Sargon. I know, maybe people don't watch this person, but like Porcelain does documentaries on some of the right wing celebrities, and not an endorsement on the channel, but like the fact that you see these things happen online, and I mean, I know it's cringe to say, but like this is like a college course of sociology, seeing the way people react, the way people reveal themselves on the internet. I know Catherine D, who people should check out on Twitter. She kind of gets into the sociology aspect of like these internet movements and this space that's being made, and I think becoming more mainstream. I think that's where all the value is. And it's not, I don't think it's social outcasts that this thing is made up of. It's just people that haven't been given a space because people didn't understand that there should be. Now I think it's becoming to the point where there's so many people in that space, they got to have a seat at the table, so to speak. So, yeah, I mean, maybe it took maybe it took trial and error from 16, 17, maybe 18. Maybe you just needed to see so much spurging to get us to where we are. I don't know, because I know we're all kind of going at our own pace. Some of us came from the libertarian neocon pipeline or whatever, but I I think right now we got a pretty good cast and crew. and I have a lot of confidence in where this thing goes because I feel the momentum.
Well, and that's the other thing that is nice, right? Is that there is kind of a, and you and I are to a certain extent part of it, right? Like a cadre of young, relatively competent people who aren't freaks. You know, I mean that sincerely, right?
Thank you, thank you.
Like they're, and obviously like neither you or I is perhaps the most neurotypical individual, shall we say, right? Like you don't get into obscure internet corners like this by being the like exact middle of the bell curve. But there are people around here who are making things, and maybe not the biggest things, but there's a real creative energy that is kind of fun and intoxicating and positive in a way that is difficult to describe, except in contrast to how things kind of used to be, if that makes sense. And actually, to tie this up in a bow, I almost feel like, weirdly enough, the kind of major, like, the major censorship and the major kind of like, in a weird way, like light political oppression is actually kind of bizarrely helpful, because in a certain way, like it did force people, and obviously you don't want to be under those circumstances, but kind of the forced limitations, I think actually in a similar way to, right, going back to limiting yourself to one set, were kind of helpful in promoting that creativity.
Right. In some cases, it kind of backs people into a corner, but
No,
in some
definitely, right.
in
And
some
people did get
scenarios,
chewed up pretty bad. I'm not going to deny that.
that's one aspect of it, and it can also kind of force the issue onto people who, as Paul Fahrenheit said in our recent recording, he talked about how some people are just here for the ride. Life, they just kind of, your Marvel audience, to use an example. But there's too many interesting people, and our audience isn't made up of the group that I'm talking about, the people that kind of go to college and don't really know for what. There's a lot of people that are invested right now and they're hedging their bets. One person that I use as an example a lot, just because the guy's, again, to bring it, everything has to go back to Van Halen, but like if you just look up David Lee Roth in the 70s, even if you hate him, if you love him, that guy can't stay away from the spotlight. He is going somewhere and you just know it, okay? And it may not be what you want. You probably would have ended up in like some funk band, to tell you the truth. But we have people that are on a trajectory. And Kai Schwimmer, he's kind of doing his own thing, but meeting that guy, it's like, okay, this person's not going to be a nobody. And that's what I see of people in our scene is, like you said, too much creativity, a lot of imagination, and if people just stick with it and don't let people tell you that it's going nowhere, I think that's where you get a lot of positive developments. So
Well, I couldn't agree more, Ace. I'm, like I said, I'm on the East Coast, so it is after midnight here. So I'm probably going to
yeah,
duck out. But thanks for inviting me on the stream. I had a really good time. This was a fun conversation.
no problem. Same to you, man. I love your stuff, man. You're
Well,
always a
thanks,
good
dude.
time. I appreciate it, man. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Well, I'll see you later.
Later, man. Later. Cool, cool. Love Jack. Love Jack Burden. Yeah, and people, please check out his channel. He's talked to Paul. He's talked to Prudentialist. Wait, was that the one after? He talked to somebody. Talked to somebody. His channel, the Jack Burden Show. The Jack Burden Show. Highly recommend. Oh man. Well, I want to thank you, Fahrenheit. Thank you. I appreciate it, man. I appreciate it. Oh, Oscar Toad. Thank you, man. Dude, you guys are the best. You guys. Todd, man, thank you, man. Thank you too. I gotta think about what Jack said about it. when I walk into class, I gotta think, these people. Oh man. Oh man. Well. And people are starting to notice. Yeah, that's right. That's right. All your friends are going to be reading Thomas77 tweets. That's just the facts, all right? That's just how it is, okay? The arc of history is long and it leads to Thomas777's 3 7s timeline. All right. We'll wind down. Got to have some pizza, man. And I'm sitting here for you guys, man. All right. I love Trouble Armstrong. I forgot about that. Man, your guys' chat, the chat is like a show in and of itself. Yeah, Vingal. I haven't seen the new one. I just know that. Oh man. Yeah, Oscar Toe. I gotta check out that movie. Man, I got so many movies. I mentioned to Ed to have Ace. Whoa, what the Seamus? Are you serious? Seamus, if you're here, man. Did he see it by chance? I want to watch that video. I want to watch more Ed content. Seamus, when you if you're on Twitter or something, I'd like to reach out if you don't mind. Karen from SpongeBob. Which one's that one? Karen. Oh, the Plankton's wife. I forgot about that. Man. Thomas will be bringing. What video was it? I'd like to check it out. And man, I gotta check out. I gotta check out that debate. I'm not on Twitter. I have to look into Megan. Yeah, dude. Don't run away from Twitter. Twitter is the place to be. All right, we'll be wrapping up. Metaphysics. How was that? Was that pretty structured? How was that? All right. Well, thank you guys. I'm grateful for you guys. And I'll probably do okay for this speech. The Jar Jar Binks post. What more could you want? Oh man. Yeah, Seamus, what video? What video was it? I gotta know. Curious. I'm curious how this Instagram thing worked. Hee hee. Hee hee. Oh, it did go through. Oh, whoops. Whoopsie. Uh-oh. So they both went through, my bad. I didn't see that. Alright. The last one, alright. Well, thank you guys. Thank you guys. So oh, this, oh, I never put the Discord link, excuse me. Okay, no problem, Seamus, no problem. I'll put the Discord oh, I shoulda did this. Shoulda did this earlier. My goodness. My goodness. If there's any interest. Alright. Thank you guys for tuning in, And we'll see. Alright. You'll probably have to copy that, and then I don't know if there's another way to do it, but Seamus, thank you. Fahrenheit. We're winding down here. Thank you, Cognitive Dissonant. One of my favorite comments. Record deepness. I didn't see you or your name. Oh, Spiffin, didn't you say Spiffin? You said something earlier that was problematic. David the Gnome, of course. Oscar Toe. I handed in my essay. Man, I gotta. You guys. Man, Spiff, I remember you said something. That'll be the one of the last things I do here. What is it? Pump up? Okay, thank you, Oscar. Ah, I'm trying, Spiff. So, does Ace own all the music? Not all of it. Oh man, I don't know where that is. I apologize. I want to find it. And thank you guys for the donations too. That's you guys don't have to do that. Oh man, I don't know where you were, Spiff. Man, I went all the way to the top. All right, I don't know. I don't remember. Anyways, Thank you guys for tuning in. Thank you for helping me out with my college work too. Oh, the Chad medal? Was it oh yeah, the masculinity. Yeah, okay. Obviously being androgynous is cringe. Obviously wearing makeup is cringe. However, the thing about the Sunset Strip is it kind of embodies this white boy spirit. If you bass guitarist, perfect timing for bass guitarist. Yes. So all the glam detractors are going to take a huge L. Okay. Clip this part because bass guitarist is going to be completely vindicated. Ba- Bass guitarist Coin was on Mars. It's currently in another stratosphere. We don't even have a name for it because it is just outside the scope of the science community. Glam metal, for those that don't know, is masculine because it combines the summer vibe of the hooks from the 80s pop combined with the technicality, the masculine God-given talent it takes to create that type of music. You understand? So it's very easy to look at the Night Song's Cinderella album cover and say, "What? These guys can't play." When actually, those guys are like Aerosmith tier with their blues rock, and if you just listen to Long Cold Winter, you would know that. But you know what the average layman does? They look at the album cover, they see the what is it? Nobody's Fool music video, and they say, "I'm out. I'm opting out of Cinderella Coin." And you would be mistaken, okay? I know Heartbreak Station isn't a great album, even though Tom Kiefer says it's their best. But Still Climbing, with all of the sleeper deep tracks, you're doing yourself no favors turning your nose up to glam. All right. I think you would actually be a lot happier with glam entering the mainstream over what we have today. Okay. It's definitely a lot more masculine. Okay. We all want to be Way Cool Jr. Okay. We all want the arena rock aesthetic that Rat has for the body talk music video. Okay. So that's just some words for Spiff and any other counter signalers of the genre, because a lot of it is misplaced, clearly, and the record shows. So anyway, so that's a nice conclusion to the 2-hour stream. You guys gonna make me late to my class tomorrow. That's okay. That's okay. I wouldn't have it any other way. What? Oh my god. Oh, wait a second, man. Spiff, you are coping. You are coping and seething in the chat. Please have some self-restraint. Listen, man. Listen, it's not a dichotomy, okay? It's not a dichotomy between this is what they want, okay? This is what they want. They want the strongest. They want the smartest too. The smartest from both genres fighting with each other while they run out with all the talent, okay? While they clean house. That's what they want. So do not this is not a heavyweight fight, okay? These two things coexist. We got glam, we got thrash, okay? It's a big tent movement. It's all metal, okay? It's not hard rock. It's not the 70s New York Dolls, early David Bowie stuff. This is part of metal, okay? It is. It's part of metal. That's the way it's got to be. Has to be. All right. But I can see where you're coming from, Spiff. I can see it. This is the VH1 propaganda that all these metal fans, everyone wearing their battle jackets, they think glam is this. Oh, please. Oh, please. Oh, please. No. Wait a second. No, wait a second, man. This is what they want, man. This is what they want. They are duping you with this false choice. I don't think so. I don't think so. Uh, I don't know. I don't know. Maybe maybe it just takes some introspection. Maybe it just takes some time. I know there's a whole industry of people that that turn this stuff away. Yeah, Fahrenheit. Thank you. Thank you. Maybe you missed the FOIA. Yeah, dude. I it is pretty obscure. It's pretty obscure. And that's one of the things about this channel too. I know I mentioned Rolling Stone magazine earlier. We don't want to adopt this corporate mouthpiece that they have adopted. We want to take the things that they got right and build off of that. That's the thing. We like that we got these you had this rag that was out there talking about music, but then they got co-opted. They're in the pocket of this Billboard magazine, all the mainstream outlets, and so they're not putting out content that would be appropriate for a fanzine like Punk magazine. So it's difficult because a lot of people haven't heard this side. They've only heard the anti-glam from the pro thrash side. They hear the yeah, it's an echo chamber for sure. We know metal fans have their limitations. Maybe even more meditation or what did I say? Maybe more limitations than some of the boomer truth regime. I don't know. It's up there. I just you gotta sit on it. You gotta sit on it. I will not fight with my metal brothers. I won't do it. All right. All right. All right. Yeah, how about Pantera? How about hey, Dimebag Daryl? How about Diamond Daryl? Is that embarrassing? Okay. One of the watershed moments in the thrash genre is copying derivative of Pantera. How about the fact that a guy like that started out listening to Def Leppard and Van Halen? What does that say? What does that say? Fahrenheit, I understand. That is important. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Gray. Agree. All right. Rex Rocker. Who could forget? Who could forget? Yeah. Yeah. You know, you can reject glam, but it is part of history. Who thinks glam Pantera was better? Well, that depends. Are we including power metal? Because I think that album, despite its album cover, might be one of the best. Would you disagree with that, Spiff? Would you say that power metal is I don't know. Maybe you gotta re-listen to some of that stuff because there's some gems. There's some gems that could hold up against a lot of the latter albums. Something to think about. Something. That is so bass guitar. That message right there. That's all you need to know. That's all you need to know. Okay. What? Whoa. What? Out for Blood, Dr. Gray. We're throwing Out for Blood under the bus. Heavy Metal Rules. What are other songs on there? Pro- the title track. Come on, that's not a totally bad album. Yeah, power metal. Think about that. Think about that. Yeah, well, are is it always the winners that write history? Is it always the people who are right that frame the story of metal? I know people like what's his name? Dunn. Who does the Metal Evolution? What's that guy's name? Man, can't think of it. Banger TV. I forgot. Anyways, would we say that that guy is right about everything? Some of the framing in VH1 documentaries, I don't know. Some of that stuff is a little dated. All right. All right. Thank you guys. Thank you. Okay, please. Please. Let's not go too hard on Clam Terra. Very unnecessary. All right. All right. We're winding down. We're winding down. I've said my take on the subject. All I'd say is maybe try it again. Maybe. You might be surprised. You might be surprised by Ride My Rocket. You just might be surprised. So, thank you guys for tuning in. I'm going to have some pizza. I'm going to probably go over this some more. I appreciate you guys. It's been a while since I've done a homework stream. There was another one. I don't know if anyone remembers on the channel. So thank you guys for tuning in. Appreciate it. All you guys, even Spiff, Dr. Gray. It is an interesting conversation. It is. And we got to sharpen our perspective on this dichotomy. Maybe I got to set it straight in written form. Who knows? So thank you guys. Bell curve, same to you and everybody else. Night, have a good night. Have a good weekend. And we'll be back probably next week. I want to try and line up something with Prudentialist. Love that guy. That guy had a good stream today too. People should probably check that out. If because I recognize some of the names, so it's probably redundant. But thank you guys as always for tuning in. And I will see you guys probably next week. Have a good rest of your evening. Well, hold on a second. Dr. Gray. Come back with the bands I hate. All right. We'll see. I don't want to say because I don't know if I have the ones. I don't know if I have it already right now. So, all right. I'll see you guys. Record Deepness. Thank you. I will see you guys next week again. Have a good rest of your evening.